Okay, good morning. I'm going to talk about the emergence of Persian language printing and typography. But first, some background information regarding the Persian language. Persian is a language of the Indo-European family, which has been written in Arabic script for over a millennium. This phase of the Persian language, which follows the Islamic conquest of Iran, is termed by some Western scholars as New Persian. The modified Arabic script, which has been used to represent the Persian language, is often called Perso-Arabic script, which gradually found its distinct visual identity through the introduction of new writing styles, especially nastaʿlīq, which you can see in this slide. In order to build an informed history of printing Persian with movable type, it is necessary to investigate publications that were printed in the Persian language using the Perso-Arabic script. Therefore, the 1546 Constantinople polyglot is not of sufficient interest here because the Persian language in this publication was represented with Hebrew characters. If you're interested in this genre, I highly recommend looking up Judeo-Persian literature in Encyclopedia Iranica. With regard to the history of printing, let me start by saying that the general discussion of the history of Arabic script printing, and for that matter typography, is very often weighted, and I would even say biased, towards the specific languages, and tinted by colonial, imperial, nationalist, and political factors. It's been encouraging to see the efforts of some scholars and practitioners to promote a more inclusive and accurate approach to both print history and type design. However, this rather slow progress is yet to produce a more inclusive and accurate approach to printing and typography of languages that have been relatively less represented. I apologize for the wrong date, Titus. I realize that that should be 2017. A large group of such cases that I just mentioned are located in the eastern part of the larger area where the Arabic script is or was used. This would include areas from the Caucasus, Iran, Central Asia, Afghanistan, Pakistan, and the Indian subcontinent, and stretches to China, Malaysia, and Singapore. In this presentation, I will show you how my research questions the received history of early Persian printing and typography. I hope this will generate some enthusiasm in our field for further dialogue and activity regarding the printing and typography of languages that have been subject to similar circumstances. Irrespective of the stylistic and linguistic distinctions, the history of Persian printing is inextricably intertwined with the typographic developments of the Arabic script. Several scholars have written about the transformation of the Arabic script from writing to print. I suffice to say that, even at the outset, the integral difficulties of this transformation limited the attention to certain stylistic and language-related concerns. None of the Arabic and Persian writing styles was developed with printing by means of movable type in mind, nor was Gutenberg's movable type printing system an attempt to accommodate the requirements of all writing systems of the world. Therefore, Arabic script printing was inherently faced with a fundamental conflict between the writing conventions and typesetting and type-founding constraints. Arabic books were printed in Europe from the early 16th century, but it was not until over a century later that printed Persian books appeared. The established history of Persian printing considers the 1639 publication entitled Dastan Masih in Persian or Historia Christi Persice in Latin to be the first book printed in the Persian language and characters. This multilingual volume was printed at the House of Elsevier in Leiden and with the European Arabic type of Thomas Erpenius, which roughly resembled the NASB script. Therefore, an overview of the established history of Persian printing suggests that in the beginning, Persian typography was considered as an extension to what was already available in Arabic. I aim to reconsider this narrative and suggest an alternative version of this history. And to do so, I start with the Stamperia Orientale Medici, or the Medici Oriental Press. Under Pope Gregory XIII, Cardinale Ferdinando I de' Medici sponsored the Medici Oriental Press, founded on 6th of March 1584 at Rome. Giovanni Battista Raimondi, an accomplished mathematician and a linguist who had acquired a considerable knowledge of Arabic and Persian, was appointed as the director of the press. Raimondi, which Emanuela talked about yesterday, wanted to publish a polyglot print Bible, which he was editing in 11 languages. The non-Latin languages were intended to be accompanied with Latin translation, and each with their own grammar and dictionary. Raimondi believed that Persian should be one of the languages in his polyglot Bible, and to convince his patrons, he wrote effusively, and I quote, "Although it seems that these are the three languages, namely Greek, Arabic, and Persian, celebrated by Oriental peoples and by whoever has learned many languages, yet those who have had more exquisite taste about them have judged that reasonably the first rank is due to the Persian, for it is the finest, the prettiest, and the wittiest language in the world." Raimondi lived at a time when the European knowledge of the Persian language was very limited, whereas Arabic was relatively well known and studied. This situation is better explained by considering the role of Arabic as the prime language of Islam. Arabic was not only the language of the Quran, but also the lingua franca in most of the Muslim world. In fact, some of the most important works of Persian scholars, such as Ibn Sina or Avicenna's famous Canon of Medicine, were composed in Arabic. According to the historian John Robert Jones, with a knowledge of Arabic, the Arab mind could be penetrated. Avicenna and Averroes could be read in their original form instead of in Latin translations. Those works would repay a study, for the Arabs had worked out the best doses in medicine, and they had written better commentaries on Aristotle than the Greeks. I should clarify that in both cases mentioned by Jones here, Arabs should probably be replaced by Muslims, since some of the scholars that he is referring to were not Arab, but wrote in the Arabic language. Raimondi is credited with the first Italian translation of various Persian texts. He intended to publish several grammar books, vocabularies, and other Persian texts, from which no published edition has yet come to light. However, Raimondi's papers, collected in various archives in Italy, suggest that he commissioned several sets of punches specifically for his intended Persian publications and chose the nastaʿlīq script as their model. What is remarkable in Raimondi's papers is his use of different forms of writing for Arabic and Persian text. It is tempting to assume that Raimondi was familiar with his compatriot Teseo Ambrogio's remark on the difficulty of reading in an unusual style. According to Ambrogio, even someone who is very well versed in Italian letter shapes may have difficulty in reading the scripts of the Germans, French, Spanish, and English, or moreover, the characters written by many merchants, despite the fact that they may be in Latin. The task of cutting the Persian punches of the Medici press was given to the French punch cutter Jean Cavaillon. According to Raimondi's notes in this document, Mastro Giovanni Cavaglione Francese began cutting the punches of a large Persian type on 15th of February 1593 and completed the task on 8th of February 1594. This exceptional document includes 6 pages of Persian characters written by Raimondi in nastaʿlīq style. Seemingly, this was not the only Persian type of the Medici press. Another document suggests that 1 year earlier, in April 1592, Cavaillon began cutting small Arabic punches to accompany a small Persian type that already existed in the Medici press. This proof, which shows an Arabic prayer printed with a naskh and nastaʿlīq type, is most probably an impression of the already mentioned small Arabic and Persian type. More significantly for this study is this impression of a ghazal, which is a form of poetry, by the 15th century Persian poet Amir Shahi Sabzevari, that is accompanied by an extract of the manuscript from which the poetry verses were taken. According to my research, this proof shows the earliest extant printing of a Persian text from movable type. Apart from a few rare references, the Persian punches of the Medici press have probably not been the subject of any serious study, particularly by a researcher who has had actual sight of the punches. However, in my visit last year to the archive of the Imprimerie Nationale in France, I was able to find definitive proof of their existence. Imprimerie Nationale possesses most of the Arabic punches of the Medici press, which were cut by the celebrated French punch cutter, Robert Grandjean. These Arabic punches and the Arabic publications of the Medici press are relatively well documented, but prior to this visit, I was not aware of any reference regarding the survival of the Persian punches. My plan to visit Imprimerie Nationale was therefore to consult other materials, but to my surprise, I met with boxes of 4 sets of Persian punches, from which I was able to identify at least 2 of them as belonging to the Medici press. These punches were labeled as Persan Cour 10 and Persan d'Alde Cour 18. I photographed and compared the punches with Raimondi's notes in documents where the Persian punches were discussed. The handwritten notes are in Italian collections and the punches are in France. What this comparison verifies is the origin of the unusually shaped ligatures and particularities of characters such as those shown in this slide. I have not yet been able to locate the types and matrices of Persan Cour 10 and Persan d'Alde Cour 18, but a rare 2-volume inventory at the archive of the Imprimerie Nationale confirms that at some point Persian types had been cast. This inventory documents the impression of all the characters available in each type case that have been arranged forming different patterns to demonstrate or record the quantity of each sort of type. I also managed to draw a link between another set of punches labeled as Persan Cour 12 and the Persian type that was used in the publications of the Sacred Congregation for the Propagation of the Faith, or Propaganda Fide. In 1622, Pope Gregory XV founded Propaganda Fide, for which a polyglot printing press was established in 1626. One of the important undertakings of the Propaganda Fide press was the publication of short introductory books in various foreign languages and writing systems. The first Persian publication of Propaganda Fide press was a short introduction to Persian alphabet, Alphabetum Persicum, printed without designation of the date and place of publication. According to my study, this publication that has been curiously overlooked by print historians should be considered as the earliest known printed Persian book. Another important aspect of this publication is that it was printed with a Persian nastaʿlīq type. The undated Alphabetum Persicum was in fact printed in Rome in 1633, which is a few years earlier than Historia Christi Persicae, that was previously known as the first printed Persian book. I extracted this date by consulting the preface to the second edition of the Alphabetum Persicum, printed in 1783, and a footnote in a catalog listing the publications of the Propaganda Fide press. It's been suggested that the possessions of the Medici press were dispersed after Raimondi's death in 1614. According to Paul Lunde, some of the types and matrices were transferred to Propaganda Fide for its Oriental publications, but I have not been able to find any explicit evidence to confirm this statement. What can be said for certain is that Napoleon was responsible for moving the Arabic and Persian punches of the Medici press from Rome to Imprimerie Nationale, which was then Imprimerie Impériale. The only set of punches at the Imprimerie Nationale, and I mean Persian punches, which were accompanied by the matrices and types cast from them, was labeled as Persan Cour 30. In fact, these punches were executed in the 17th century and at the request of François Savary d'Aubrev, the French ambassador to Constantinople, and completed by the French type founder Marcelin Legrand in 1855. Remarkably, d'Aubrev's nastaʿlīq type might be the only available type in that writing style produced prior to the 20th century. This is important because although punches and matrices provide information regarding the shape and the style of the characters, only type sorts reveal significant information concerning the method of typesetting with nastaʿlīq types, which had previously remained somewhat uncertain. Prior to this study, the invention or the creation of the first nastaʿlīq type was generally attributed to the English Orientalist Charles Wilkins. As reported in the annual biography and obituary, combining mechanical ingenuity with literary acquirements, Mr. Wilkins, as a relaxation from his more laborious pursuits, prepared with his own hands the first types, both Bengali and Persian. Some specimens of his nastaʿlīq type first appeared in Halhed, a grammar of the Bengal language that was printed in Hooghly at 1778, and the complete impression of this type in Gladwin's A Compendious Vocabulary, English and Persian, printed at Malda in 1780. Despite the repeatedly cited claims in various sources that credit Wilkins with the invention of the first Persian nastaʿlīq type, my research shows that about 2 centuries before Wilkins' nastaʿlīq type appeared in India, there were several attempts made in Europe to produce types in that writing styles. Furthermore, Wilkins' claim for having been solely responsible for the metallurgy, engraving, and founding of the Bengali and Persian type has been discounted by Graham Shaw in Printing in Calcutta to 1800 and Fiona Ross in The Printed Bengali Character and Its Evolution. It has also been suggested that Wilkins designed his nastaʿlīq type based on his own hand. This assumption would link Wilkins' approach in designing his Persian type with Raimondi's, who also penned the model for the Persian punches of the Medici press. There is, however, a significant distinction between the early Persian publications in Europe and the publications printed with Wilkins' nastaʿlīq type. It seems that none of the nastaʿlīq types of the 16th and 17th centuries were used to print any publication that was solely in the Persian language. As far as propaganda Fide press is concerned, its printing of only multilingual works can be explained by a decree that was issued in 1631 banning the publication of foreign language works unless accompanied with a Latin or Italian translation. On the other hand, Wilkins' nastaʿlīq type was used to print some Persian books that only at the most contained an English title page or a preface. To summarize, the findings that I have presented here reveal that despite the conventional narrative, the first printing of a Persian text was not with an Arabic naskh type, but a Persian nastaʿlīq type. Also, the first Persian book was printed in the Catholic Rome and not the Protestant Leiden. From the perspective of Persian typography, this research highlights that some of the early European printers, whether motivated by missionary or scholarly objectives, did consider the particular visual identity of Persian writing styles and tried to reflect it in their work. This attention to the visual culture of various language communities that use the Arabic script is rarely echoed in subsequent advances in typesetting and type founding technologies, even to this day. Thank you.